for 3 p.m. so that the certainty about your programming in the studios will not be shaken, and it will be for an hour. So we'll make it very compact. That puts a burden of duty on our part to be here, and for you also to make your questions very compact so that the answers can come flowing. 1 hour, 3 to 4 p.m. going forward. I now invite the Secretary to Government, who is also the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, to make his remarks. SGF, sir.
Members of the Presidential Task Force, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, I welcome you all to the briefing of Thursday, 23rd April 2020. The Presidential Task Force wishes to continue to express appreciation to all Nigerians, and in particular our frontline health workers, including members of the press, for the tremendous work that is being done. We shall continue to count on this support and collaboration to confront the coronavirus pandemic, because it is only when we are together that we can defeat the virus completely. It is only a matter of time before this nightmare passes. The Presidential Task Force also continues to monitor and modify the strategy as development unfold. Our assessment of the impact of the lockdown is still ongoing, and I wish to confirm to you that the DG, SCDC, and the WHO representative have returned from their tour of 9 states, and their report will be received, evaluated, preparatory to making the appropriate recommendations. PTF notes that the number of cases reported have risen to 873 across 25 states and the Federal Capital Territory, with 119 discharges and 28 fatalities. I have mentioned these numbers in order to underscore the need for citizens to comply with advisories strictly so that we can slow down the spread of the virus. These advisories still remain the most effective way of flattening the curve. The situation in Kano is still being assessed and monitored closely. Based on preliminary findings, the Presidential Task Force has directed that the Center for Disease Control to send an enhanced support team, mobilize resources for contact tracing, and immediately ensure necessary steps are taken in conjunction with the state government to contain the spread of the pandemic in Kano and stop the city from becoming the next epicenter. The Presidential Task Force views with some measure of concern the non-compliance by private medical facilities with the directive to seek accreditation before treating COVID-19 related cases. The highly infectious nature of COVID-19, if not well managed in a purpose-built facility and specialists in attendance, pose a lot of danger, not just to the medical staff in such hospitals, but also to other patients and loved ones at home. We therefore appeal strongly to operators of private medical facilities wishing to continue to treat COVID-19 cases to apply to the Federal Ministry of Health urgently for accreditation. The issue of stigmatization still persists, and it is counterproductive to our efforts. This disease does not discriminate on status, creed, tribe, or color, and anyone can be infected. It is my humble appeal Once you are infected by this disease, you should immediately report to appropriate medical facilities in your own interest and the interest of your loved ones. COVID-19 is not a condition, and there is no need to stigmatize anybody. I must remind all of us that over 90% of infected persons recover from this disease. In this regard, I urge all those who have recovered from this disease to continue to tell their stories, to encourage other persons to step forward to seek care and medical attention. The Presidential Task Force has continued to collaborate with governors in the various states, and the outcome of our conversation with the Nigerian Governors Forum yesterday, under the chairmanship of Governor of Ekiti, and the platform that was created for that discussion, we will form a critical part of recommendations to be made, Mr. President, in the coming days. Nigeria has continued to receive international support in the wake of this pandemic. We thank our development partners, public-spirited individuals, and corporate organizations for all the support that we have received in cash and kind. Earlier this morning, the ambassador of the People's Republic of China in Nigeria led the China-Nigeria Chamber of Commerce to present a symbolic check in the sum of 48,120,000 to the COVID support fund. This gesture underscores the deep relationship between Nigeria and China, and it is well appreciated. The ambassador has also informed the Presidential Task Force that the third phase of medical supplies from the government of China is ready for airlift. Arrangements will be made towards actualizing this. Let me emphasize that all donations go into various designated collection accounts opened by the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, which has been published, and swept into the Treasury Single Account TSA with the Central Bank of Nigeria on a daily basis. The PTF does not manage any of that COVID account-related donation of funds. Yesterday in my address, I thanked the President General of the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, His Eminence the Sultan of Sokoto, for endorsing the recommendations of the Emergency Fatwa Committee by directing the Ummah on the suspension of obligatory religious activities during the Ramadan. I wish to reiterate the importance of complying with these directives as a major thrust for the control of the spread of this pandemic. I implore all state governors once again to apply these directives in their states as they consider measures to be taken. May the Ramadan season be of immense blessings to our nation and the world. Finally, what I bring to Nigerians today is a message of hope and a message of strength. I encourage you to comply with all the advisories and to continue to be your brother's keepers, especially given the unintended impact of the lockdown on the poor, the needy, the aged, the vulnerable, persons living with disabilities, and the sick. This is the time to show the essence of the fear of God and the love for humanity in us. I now invite the Honorable Minister of Health to present his update for today. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Honorable Ministers here present, Directors General, ladies and gentlemen of the press. What I'm going to say rests on the very strong first part that the Secretary to the Government already mentioned. And as of today, the 23rd of April 2020, 873 people in 25 states and the Federal Capital Territory have been confirmed to have COVID-19 from 9,522 tests. The 91 additional confirmations are as follows: 74 in Lagos, 5 in Katsina, 4 in Ogun, 2 each in Delta and Edo, 1 each in Adamawa, Kwara, Oyo, and the FCT. 197 persons have been successfully treated for COVID-19 and discharged home, while 28 deaths have sadly been recorded. Like yesterday, the high number of new cases is a manifestation of more efficient testing, but also of ongoing community transmission. The federal government, through the Federal Ministry of Health and the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, continues to support preparedness and response to COVID-19 in all states and the FCD. Rapid response teams are working closely with state emergency operation centers to strengthen operation activities. Speaking about the structure of our response, which is to test, treat, trace, and isolate, the idea is to test people based on set criteria, such as travel history, contacts with persons who have traveled, the symptoms, or persons in clusters of those of where there is high prevalence, and all this is for the prospects of high yield. Persons who test positive in treatment are placed in treatment and isolation, and we trace all their contacts and quarantine them for 14 days. Today, NCDC laboratories have capacity to test 1,500 samples per day in 13 laboratories across the country. However, we are testing an average of about 600 samples per day, because that is all the samples collected and sent for testing, which means that there is a certain underutilization, and the factors implicated in the process may include surveillance, sample collection, and mode of transportation, which can be improved upon to increase operational efficiency. This is where a little investment can help, and the results of such intensification of efforts can be seen especially in Lagos, where improved logistic management also increased sample collection and significantly reduced turnaround time. As we further increase our testing capacity and accredit more laboratories, and even more robust sample transportation and infrastructure will be put in place to promptly convey samples to any of the 13 laboratories that have been activated so far. Nigeria's strategy is to admit all persons who test positive for COVID-19 into designated accredited treatment facilities to contain the spread of the virus and ensure prompt management to forestall complications. I urge all individuals who test positive for COVID-19 to report at any of our designated isolation and treatment centers. The Federal Ministry of Health must be able to account for all infected persons and ascertain the containment of this infection. States are strongly encouraged to ensure that all persons who test positive for COVID-19 are admitted at the designated center, and to ensure that the public suffers no hazard from choices that individuals wish to make. The Federal Ministry of Health can assist all persons who are seeking privacy security, and anonymity to find the best treatment options. Contact tracing is key to containing the infection. As persons are confirmed positive for COVID-19, we trace all the contacts that they had in the preceding 14 days. This is a tedious and meticulous activity which is conducted by NCDC along with the states concerned, and for which the cooperation of the public is always sought. Nigeria Center for Disease Control has finalized the contact tracing right guidelines with all states to actively aid this case finding. The other key factor I mentioned before in the response is where capacity is needed after positive testing. It is to isolate and treat all persons found to be positive for the virus. Especially challenging, as has been said here before, are persons who test positive but have mild or no symptoms, but they are infectious to others. These persons make up a good number of the cases we are handling in Nigeria, but they must nevertheless be referred to isolation and treatment centers with accredited infection prevention and control protocols. Failure to isolate such persons may constitute a risk, but also a risk to the individual himself, because his condition can change suddenly. Infection can persist in the community and transmission could continue if such persons continue to mingle in society. I applaud all our health workers in the front lines of COVID-19 pandemic, and the government will continue to provide you with the necessary personal protective equipment. I urge you all to take the necessary precautions for your own safety. Please do not try to treat patients without using adequate PPE, and frontline workers must undertake refresher courses, training in IPC at intervals. This advice is necessary due to the number of health workers who are tested positive. There are over 40 now. Or others who have had to be quarantined in the last two weeks due to exposure and are therefore not able to contribute to the health sector effort. I urge you all to remain vigilant in line of duty and maintain, as I always say, a high index of suspicion. All citizens are once again, as I do every day, remind you to use a mask or face covering when leaving your residence, preferably, and also to practice hand and respiratory hygiene and physical distancing to avoid mass gathering and non-essential travels. Every travel you make nowadays, particularly if you're in a crowded bus or a crowded minivan, is a risk to you, because you will not know if whoever is sitting next to you is a silent positive. So avoid any travel and postpone any travel that is not a matter of life and death. Individual actions will determine the success of the actions being taken by government to stop the spread of COVID-19 is therefore a collective effort. If you suspect yourself or anyone around you may have symptoms that are suspicious, call the number we have always given, 112 or 0800 9700 0010. With time, you will be able to find that the activation of our ambulance service will be available to pick those who are with symptoms or those who have COVID-19 diagnosis to take them to treatment centers. Resources and real-time information can be found on the social media handles of Federal Ministry of Health and NCDC, and the Federal Ministry of Health website, and the NCDC COVID-19 microsite, which is COVID-19 ncdc.gov.ng. Please stay home, stay safe, and take precautions. Thank you.
Chair, honorable ministers, gentlemen and ladies of the press. Good to be back with you today. Like you know, I have just returned together with Dr. Fiona Braka, my colleague at the WHO, from a 4-day trip across 9 states of Nigeria. We started from Imo, went to Anambra, then down to Rivers, to Delta, Oyo, Ogun State, Katsina, and Kano, crossing almost all the geopolitical zones in Nigeria. The aim of this trip was really to gain a better understanding of the progress that we're making and the challenges that we face, the priorities and the issues at the subnational level in order to shape a better response. I must say the trip was eye-opening. We really saw firsthand incredible efforts being made across every state in Nigeria. In almost every state, the efforts was led on directly by their excellencies, the governors. In fact, we met almost all the governors wherever we went. We met His Excellency, Governor of Imo State, Hope Uzodimma. We met Willie Obianyo, His Excellency, Governor Wike in Rivers, His Excellency, Governor Kowa, His Excellency, Governor Makinde. We met His Excellency, Dapo Abiodun, His Excellency, Governor Masari, as well as His Excellency, finally, in Kano State, the Ganduje. So, in every state, welcomed us and shared openly the challenges they faced, the opportunities, their work over the last few weeks. And this is critical because for the work that we're doing, the implementation across board depends on the actions mostly at the state level. So their leadership has been critical. Almost every state has set up some form of a task force, often led by their deputy governors themselves. So this work is really translating to effect around the states. So secondly, on healthcare partnerships, what we really saw was in every state the mobilization of private sector resources, all the partners in the states doing whatever, coming together to work around this response. So none of us is alone in this. Just like we're preparing at the national level, bringing in everyone that we have access to, the states are doing the same. Converting NYSC camps in some places, IDP camps in others, and in others just putting up new tents. So using whatever resources are available to them and making sure that they're deployed for this outbreak. The other thing we tried to do was to ensure that experience is shared among the states. Some of the states like Ogun and Lagos have started very early in the campaign to respond, not in the campaign, in the outbreak to respond, obviously because they had cases earlier. Now we're trying to avoid a situation where every state is learning the same lessons, the hard way. So we're trying to make sure that lessons learned in one state can be translated in the other state and be used to solve the same problems. Because across board, the problems are similar. So really, a lot of our mission was to share information, make sure that every state had the benefit of learning from other states, and therefore didn't have to solve the same problems over and over again. Of course, every state was also struggling with how to use their human resources and how to repurpose individuals doing different things. So developing staff capacity in IPC, in contact tracing and surveillance, in managing health, managing patients safely. All these were ideas that were shared. And we saw how a lot of the guidelines that we had developed at the national level were translated into guidelines at the local level and used in the different states. Now, critically, we also saw the emergence of this state task forces on COVID-19, and the great work they're doing on resource mobilization and on supporting the EOCs that were actually involved in managing the outbreaks. And we shared information that we had learned from some states in how to improve organizational efficiency, how to take decentralized efforts, and how to make sure everybody is working together. So on return, we are going to put our thoughts together. We have started doing this together with Dr. Braka, and that will feed into some of the decisions that will be made over the next weekend around the next few weeks. One thing I must say is that the entire country is in this together, and it was really gratifying to see the hopes, the energies, but also the challenges. Our country is big, complex, diverse, but across every state we visited, we saw a determination to get ahead of this curve and to make sure that we come out of it stronger. So I'll be willing to answer any questions during the session on the differences in the response in the different states and open to any discussions further on the great work being done at the state level. I'll use the last few minutes to really say thank you to the Nigerian Air Force. Hardly have I ever been exposed to a group of Nigerians so committed to their work, absolutely punctual, humble, and dedicated to the service of our country, and I'm very grateful together with the team for the excellent service they provided to us over the past 4 days. Thank you very much.
The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Honorable Ministers, members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID, ladies and gentlemen of the press, good afternoon. I would like to first of all start by informing you that the PTF continues to engage very closely with state governments. We are particularly pleased to note the decision by the Nigeria Governors Forum to restrict interstate travel. This is really important when it comes to reducing the risk of interstate spread and transmission of the virus. The Honorable Minister and the DG and CDC have already spoken about the additional support to Kano. The PTF has directed, and in line with the directive, NCDC has already redeployed at least 17 persons, including 7 from the WHO to Kano, to deal with the current issues that have arisen. In addition to this, the DG and CDC has worked with the State Emergency Operating Center to reorganize the way it functions, and a joint team together with that from the state government is currently investigating the concerns with regards to deaths. Additional lab equipments have also been sent to Kano yesterday, but the Kano lab at the moment is closed for the next few days while fumigation and disinfection is ongoing. It's extremely important that we continue to measure and stop community spread. We cannot do this without the cooperation of the public. We continue to call on the public to please restrict and stay where they are. It is important. It's a temporary sacrifice for the long-term benefit of all of us. In terms of the issue of testing, we note that some states continue to have a low level of testing for the virus. You will not have a case if you have never tested for it. We are encouraging the state emergency operating centers to actively look for cases in the community, and especially those presenting with symptoms consistent with COVID or those having unusual respiratory illnesses in the hospitals, and actively go out to test these people, because this is the only way we can interrupt transmission. And the earlier we do this, the better overall. We know that some symptoms can be quite vague, but there are classical symptoms such as a fever, which is seen in up to 90% of cases, a cough that is seen in 2/3 of cases, and a shortness of breath in about 1/3 of cases. Other unusual symptoms might include a loss of smell, what we call anosmia, which is increasingly being seen to be specific for COVID compared to other viral infections, upper respiratory viral infections. Finally, I would like to talk about Ramadan and specifically reiterate the need for Muslim faithfuls to practice all acts of ibadah and salawat within their homes as we look forward to the commencement of Ramadan, hopefully tomorrow, Friday or Saturday. I'd like to remind the public that these are unusual times, these are challenging times, there are times that we must act accordingly in order to control the spread of the virus. As we're seeing Ramadan tomorrow, we need to make sure that we protect ourselves so that we are around next year to observe another Ramadan. On behalf of the PTF, we wish our Muslim brothers and sisters Ramadan Kareem. Thank you.
Thank you. We have finished phase one. We shall now take the questions. Colleagues, are you ready?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Friday. I'm a reporter with Channels TV. I will direct my first question to the DG of NCDC. You made a visit to Kano State, among the states that you visited. I would like to hear from you the first-hand information you got from them regarding the multiple deaths and other issues that has to do with COVID-19. The second question, I would like the SGF to respond to it. You said that the resolutions that you reached during the meeting with the NGF, the Nigerian Governors Forum, will form critical part of the recommendations that the PTF will submit to the President. Now, part of the resolution from that NGF meeting is the recommendation for interstate lockdown. Are you telling us that that will be part of the critical recommendation you will make to the President? I would also like to ask the Minister of Foreign Affairs to respond to this. This is a viewer from Liverpool, United Kingdom, who sent this in to Channels TV. He said, 4 weeks after completing the application form for evacuation and also asking them to pay £350, with each of them agreeing to pay for their flight ticket, they also agree that they will pay the expenses of isolation. Nothing has been heard from the Nigerian government. I'd like you to respond to that. What is happening? And finally, sir, the situation room report of NCDC shows that 26% of infection actually have no contact. They have no history of travel. Now, it means that we have huge number of community transmission. Now, bearing that in mind, would you not recommend that we should make testing, especially in those states with high burden, mandatory? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amaka Ode. I report for Arise News. My first question actually goes to the Minister of Health. Sir, I want to get an update from you concerning some Nigerians who have actually come out and say that they're working on vaccines, and some of them said they even have come up with vaccines for coronavirus. Especially, I want to mention Professor Maurice Iwu. So I want to know if your ministry has been in contact with him and other Nigerians who are working or have come up with some vaccines, as we've seen in other countries like Madagascar. The president is the one who's championing a local solution to coronavirus. So I'd like to get an update on that. And my next question will be to the DG of the NCDC. Well, good to have you back. Well, Friday has actually asked one of my questions, which has got to do with Kano State. But plus, I also want to find out where we are in terms of how many tests we've actually carried out in the country so far since the pandemic started. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Rachel Abuja from the News Agency of Nigeria, and my question is for the DG NCDC. Sir, new findings reveal that saliva has a better yield as a sample than other specimens. What are we doing about this finding to improve access to our test for the virus? Meanwhile, I would like to know who is responsible for the validation of rapid test kits for COVID in Nigeria, and how many have undergone trials? Many thanks.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Helen Samede Akins. So I want to know what the task force is doing to check the SSs of uniformed men in this lockdown. Only recently, it was reported that a petrol attendant was killed while offering essential services in Aba? Thank you.
Good afternoon, sirs. My name is Juliana Taiwo Baloye. I write for the Sun newspapers. SGF, sir, or maybe the coordinator, the NLC has written to the PTF on COVID-19, warning against further extension of this lockdown. We'd like to get the task force reaction. DG, sir, in your speech, you noted that you have states have their own task force on COVID. Beyond the daily briefing via the media, reports out there is that there is no collaboration nor synergy between the PTF and the state's task force. What official channels are you using to communicate with this task force? The question is, how do we want to contain the spread if we are not synergizing? The SGF and probably the Minister of Foreign Affairs, China has given us money and they are promising more on the way. The question is, we are seeing what they are doing to Africans in China. We hope this is not a way of shutting our mouth to condemn what they are doing. We'd like to hear from the government what the government is doing to tell China that Africans, indeed Nigeria, is unhappy with what is happening there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sirs. My name is Nancy Oyedia Orum from AIT. My question goes to the Minister of Health. Sir, the index case of coronavirus in Nigeria was reported, I think, on the 27th of February, and that of South Africa was reported on the 5th of March. But I've actually noticed that South Africa, up to date, have tested about 130,000 persons from 5th to date. We have countries like Ghana also who, during that time frame, also got their index case. They are right now at 30,000 to about 60,000 cases that they have tested. My question is, could it be that we have tested more people than the NCDC has reported, or are there lessons we can learn from some of these countries on strategies that they are putting in place to ensure that we measure up with some of these countries? My second question, sir, is also for you. Recently, the Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige, announced that hazard allowance has been approved for medical personnel and doctors also. But I'm a bit confused. He said there are three categories. There are some people who are getting 70%. There are also other people who get 40%. And there are also health workers who get 10%. So I just want to get a clarification why that is like that. So while I was seated here, one of the parents sent me a message and said some private schools, I don't know, the Minister of Education is not here, but sir, you can relay it back to him. One of the parents said most private schools are mandating their students to pay 1,000 naira daily for online classes. I don't know if the SGF can do something about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have taken all the questions for today. They are directed at the Honorable Minister of Health, the Director General, NCDC, the National Coordinator, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Honorable Minister of State for Education is not here. And the SGF will wrap up the answer session after the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. We'll begin with the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you for the questions that came up. The first has to do with local answers to the coronavirus. The coronavirus has been clearly stated as a new virus. Nobody knows well, at the beginning, nobody knew anything, but now we know a bit more about it. But there's likely a lot more to be learnt about it and about its behavior. And scientists all over the world are working at high pace, some at feverish pace, to try to find answers. Among the answers they're looking for are vaccines. Some are looking for medicines that are going to be efficacious. And there are others who are looking for various herbs and other kinds of, let us say, support that could help to cure it. The other day, somebody was asking about some ginger and things that have been used and black seed. But all our attempts, they're good attempts. Every attempt is welcome. And I've said here before that we have departments in the Ministry of Health for traditional and complementary medicine and alternative medicine, which will look at all suggestions and all things that are put out there as possibilities for handling coronavirus. We don't throw away any idea. So we pass any idea, any suggestions coming from the traditional side, we know where to refer it to for investigation, and others are referred this way. So we can only guess where the answer will come from, but all are welcome to try. Right now, we do not have any traditional medicine that I know of that actually works. Some may help to boost your immunity, but that is not something that we can prove. With rapid test kits, the World Health Organization has not validated any of it. They believe that the results are not reliable. You can do it, it probably gives you a direction, but I'm told by those who have evaluated that even the manufacturers tell you that after you do this test, please go and verify. So there is not enough faith in rapid diagnostic test to be able to rely on it. So if you did a test and it told you you were positive or negative, you were not sure. And I think that this illness is so such that you really want a secure result that is true, not to be misled. Now, with regard to the case that came in on the 27th February, and then it came a little later in South Africa, well, what remember is that both were brought in by people coming from Italy. That's all we know. But since then, we've followed different trajectories. I think all countries develop their own strategy on how to approach these things. In Nigeria, we try to, some people talk about flattening the curve. We try to push the curve to one side so that we have time to prepare our not very strong health system. And also because at the time we had challenges for reagents, the first country to have reagents was South Africa. And our very first option at the very beginning in testing was to send our samples, in fact, to South Africa until we started getting our own reagents and we got the nursing training to be able to do our own tests. And between then and now, within 2 months, we already have 13 laboratories working. In fact, we have excess capacity for those laboratories that are functioning. But our own strategy, again, because we have to be very careful about reagents, even at the beginning, was a very careful strategy of what I call smart testing. You are testing where you think you get a yield. Some countries decide to do blanket testing. You could drive in, give your sample, and so on. And other countries started complaining that the yield was too small. They were wasting cartridges, and these reagents are too expensive. Some people learned the hard way, but we do what we call smart testing. You have a travel history, you have a contact, and that was in the first phase. Now we're worrying about community transmission. We're looking at persons who have symptoms. If you have symptoms that remind us of coronavirus, you'll be tested. If you're also resident in an area where there's a cluster of persons who have had it, then you're also eligible to be tested. But that is try to use your resources as wisely as possible. Remember, we also have a country of nearly 200 million now. We have to be ready to be able to cater to all of them. So we are having different approaches which would not allow us to actually compete in the testing. And we'll also be extremely stringent in the way we pursue the cases that we find. Remember, we were among the first to start screening at the airport when this disease was first mentioned. And we also were doing very stringent contact tracing, for which I really praise the Lagos State Public Health Department and also the NCDC. They did a very nice job there, for which we are very proud. So that's the reason why we have the statistics that we have. As for the hazard allowance, yes, there's a conversation around it. It has not yet, whatever the proposals are have to be validated by the PTF. They have also to be validated by other authorities like the Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, and so on. So other processes that will take place before it is announced. But it is a work in progress. It is not going to be hidden. I think that's all that concerns the Ministry of Health. Thank you.
So thank you. Friday, yes, we're all worried about, anxious about Kano. But just like a crime scene investigation, these things take time. So we need time. So we got into Kano, we had there have been a few reports of deaths. The first thing we do in any field epi investigation is to verify what we're doing and to see whether what is being reported is actually the case. So that's what we're doing at the moment. We have a team working with the government of Kano State to verify the incident and make sure that what is going on is actually what is being reported. Then we'll carry out control measures and see if it's an infectious disease, if it's COVID, if it's something else. These are things that are now happening in Kano. But generally, what we saw, like I said, was, Kano was, unlike Lagos, that had a gradual increase in cases. The cases really increased rapidly in Kano. So suddenly they were faced with a situation, you have 20 cases today, you're trying to bring them in, the next day you have 30, you're trying to bring them in, the next day you have another 30. So it's not a very simple thing to manage. So what we sat down with them, improved the organizational efficiency of the response, the leadership of the EOC, we sat down the whole night trying to reorganize how they were working. I think you'll see the results over the next few days. The other thing, we actually went to the treatment center itself, and we saw a very committed group of clinicians. And so the treatment center was actually excellent. They have a capacity at the moment for over 300. So there are many aspects of the response that had gone well. There are others that were scaling up. And in the middle of all of this, there was this crisis about death. So I think, just like we saw with Lagos a while ago, very soon we'll also be in the same position with Kano, improving from an initial bumpy ride to a much more smoother response. So the other question was around community transmission and making testing mandatory. Friday, I don't think any country, even the most resourced ones in the world, have made testing mandatory. If you know of any, please, I'll be interested in knowing. We have a very good strategy around testing. Yes, the numbers are always being thrown at us, Ghana, South Africa, but we're not playing a numbers game. We're not playing a numbers game. These are people. They're human beings. Before you test anyone, we go through a risk assessment to make sure it's appropriate to test you. Up till recently, we had about 5,000 tests, but in the last week, we've gone up from 5,000 to 10,000. So if you imagine from the beginning of the outbreak till last week, we tested 5,000. Then in the last week, we've tested another 5,000. And we're going to continue scaling our testing rapidly. We've just gotten the first set of regions for high throughput testing. So I think there will be a change in the numbers. But to be honest, I'm not playing a numbers game with testing. We'll have a strategy, we'll stick to that strategy and make sure we deliberately increase the number of tests, but while testing the right people at the right time. Thanks, Rachel, on your question on saliva. I'm really impressed by your readership of a newly published peer-reviewed articles. Yes, we saw that paper. It contradicts some of the previous knowledge that we had, that nasopharyngeal swabs are really the best. So we're looking at it and then we'll make a decision. Actually, taking saliva samples is a lot easier than taking nasopharyngeal swabs. So if that's the case, it will make our life a lot easier moving forward. The other question on RDTs and who is responsible for the validation. It's a joint effort. The primary responsibility is with the Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria, but they don't have samples. So they have to work with the clinicians that have the samples, that collect the samples from patients. The clinicians have to get a research protocol approved. So that's where the Nigerian Health Research Ethics Committee comes in. Once they do all of that, they have to take it to NAFDAC for approval. So you can see that there's no one organization that can do all of it. So it's a very tedious process. I know that right now MLSCN is working on it, and I actually spoke with the chief executive this morning around the processes to do that for RDTs. I think the final question was on synergy between states and federal. I think there's actually great synergy. We speak with the states at various levels, teleconferences all the time. I lead on the technical side. The leaders of the PTF, of course, have the discussion on the leadership of the task force side. So, it is a complex response, and we have 36 plus 1 states in Nigeria to coordinate with. So we're trying very hard to improve that coordination, but I don't think there was any problem with synergy. In fact, I think all the governors that we saw over the last 4 days were very happy with the level of collaboration we have achieved since this outbreak started. So I think I've answered all the questions. Thank you very much.
So I think most of the questions I had appear to have been answered, but I'll just add clarity to a few. Regarding the saliva test, just to say that the article, the work is actually not peer-reviewed yet. It's a preprint, so it's yet to be validated in terms of publication. But there are a few saliva test kits that are being licensed at the moment in the US. And if that particular publication is medically validated via publication through a peer-reviewed process, then that would definitely help us, because it will improve the likelihood of increased testing and reduce the need for things like swabs and PPE, because you have to wear PPE in order to take the sample, etc. And it will be very much welcome. So just watch this space. In terms of the access of security agencies, as the public know, we have been engaging closely with the security agencies, and we continue to ask them to respect the exemptions placed by Mr. President on the lockdown. There are clear exemptions that have been elucidated, and we will continue to work closely with the security agencies, including the IG of police, to make sure that people's rights are respected. So the issue of NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress, writing against further extension of the lockdown. So the PTF takes its responsibility very seriously. We know that we are in challenging times. We know how difficult it is for the public to stay at home, the restrictions that are in place. We will be looking at all the evidence in terms of the impact of the lockdown over the last 4 weeks on the epidemic itself, and balance it with other issues before we make recommendations to Mr. President. Whatever recommendations we'll make will be in the best interest of the country and the people of Nigeria. Finally, the issue of synergy between PTF and state governments. So as the DG and CDC said, we are working actually very closely with state governments. We have meetings with the state commissioners of health, and we're just about to activate a link with the state PTF, state government task force leads, so that we can continue to have that synergy. The chair of the SGF, the chair of the PTF just attended a meeting yesterday with the Nigeria Governors Forum. Both the DG and myself have been attending meetings with the NGF. So that synergy is there. We will continue to strengthen it and make sure that state governments take the necessary steps to control this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the Minister of Information and Culture before we take the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Honorable Minister of Information and Culture.
Thank you very much. I think I want to react to the question about the fellow that was killed in Abuja State. I know that the task force will meet regularly with the security chiefs, and we always implore them to ensure that the officers, while they are very fair in maintaining the lockdown, must also be very humane. But the particular instance referred to, the petrol attendant was not killed by the policeman. Facts that are in our possession is that a policeman hit somebody riding a keke. People were protesting. It was during the protest that another motorist hit the petrol attendant. Well, it does not matter who killed him. A life is a very precious thing. We regret it, but we just want to establish the facts of the matter, that the petrol attendant actually died when he was hit by an oncoming vehicle during the protest. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Good evening, everybody. The question was in respect of somebody in the UK who paid £350 4 weeks ago with the hope of being evacuated from the UK. Well, first of all, when we made the announcement that we were trying to assess, first of all, how many Nigerians were in various countries and wanted to come home, we pointed out that all communication should be with the High Commission. And at no time did the High Commission or did any directives emanate from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that Nigerians should take tests. So, where the £350 for tests came from, I really don't know, but it certainly was not from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, nor from our various embassies and high commissions. Now, of course, there are various stages that one had to go through. The first was to the process of collation of the numbers of people who wanted to come in different countries, because there are Nigerians all over the world. And once we began to get a sense of the numbers, the next stage was obviously, in parallel to that, trying to see which airlines and how we could actually convey them back to Nigeria. And that has been a longish process because, of course, we didn't want to have a situation where, those who wanted to come back could not afford the tickets. We explored the possibility of bringing them back free of charge. Unfortunately, the funding was not available. The resources were not available for that. So we had to, negotiate with airlines, and then, also making sure that, we have in place the centers where they would stay when they came back. So this has really been the process. It has not been, an easy one, trying to get all that together. And as I reported yesterday, we still need a little bit more time to have all the, all the accommodation, hotels and things ready. There are some issues that we were experiencing, finding hotels and so forth, but we feel that, we're getting over the most difficult part, and that within 2 weeks, hopefully, we should start the process. But again, the capacity, the numbers that we can bring back at any given time are limited, and at the moment, we just have the capacity to take about 200 to 250 people in Lagos at any given time, and then 200 to 250 for Abuja. But since then, there have been other developments. United Emirates is also is putting planes at the disposal of Nigerians in Dubai, and we're just looking for clearance and approval. Various Nigerians have bought their tickets. The planes are there to be ready to convey them here, and so we are now just fine-tuning, all the requisite approvals, and then that might already actually be the first one to bring Nigerians home, even before we have gone out to bring them back. The other question was in respect of medical assistance being provided by China, especially in the context of the discrimination, or the cases of discrimination and racism that's been taking place in the country. Now, we have been engaging with the Chinese government at various levels. At the level of our consulate in Guangzhou, which is where these cases of discrimination and racism have been taking place, and also at the federal level in China, in Beijing, with our ambassador and our embassy in Beijing. Now, we've made it clear to the Chinese government in no uncertain terms, unequivocally, that under no circumstance will we accept racial discrimination against Nigerians or indeed Africans or blacks in China. That is a red line for us. They have in turn told us that there is no case of that ongoing. But clearly, we are seeing videos. I have received reports, and we've told them it's unacceptable. And, we're also engaging with other African countries to decide and work together on definitive steps and measures that we will take because of this situation. In addition, I have directed our consulate in Guangzhou to systematically detail every single case of discrimination and every single case of loss or damage suffered by any Nigerian. And we will pursue each and every single one very robustly with the Chinese government. If it requires compensation and damages, etc. So for us, as I said, it's a red line, and we're going to fight it to the very end. We're extremely disappointed because we have excellent relations with the government and people of China that such a thing can happen at this stage. And, when there were calls for travel to be banned to China, when we had the outbreak in Wuhan and so forth, we went along with the World Health Organization's advice, not to place a ban on China, and we showed, real solidarity, because we've also had our own experience of epidemics with Ebola and so forth. But really, we're deeply, deeply wounded by what has happened to Nigerians and other Africans in China. Of course, the government has given us explanations and so forth, but really, it is something we never expected, and we will pursue it to its final conclusion, and we will not make any compromises in doing so. There have been some comments in the public domain as if our policy is somehow, that we're held somehow hostage by the fact that, we have received a lot of cooperation, economic cooperation from China in the past. But I can assure you that, that where this is concerned, we are going to pursue it to its very end, and irrespective of whatever economic cooperation we have with China. Because in the world of today, we absolutely will not and cannot tolerate and accept any form of racism or discrimination against black, against Africans. And as the largest black country in the world, African country in the world, it behoves on us to be at the front line in defending the dignity of blacks and Africans everywhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall now take the SGF.
There was a question that had to deal with the issue of request by the governors for a 2-week extension of the lockdown, but with specific emphasis on interstate travels. Well, that's a proposal coming from the governors. It was a decision they took. All the 36 governors were on their video conferencing yesterday when they had their meeting. They took that decision. And when I joined with a set of the governors, with the vice president and the minister for health and minister for finance later, with the governor of the central bank later in the evening, they did indicate that one of the resolutions they took when they had their conference yesterday was specifically to request that an extension be given with specific emphasis on interstate travels. Basically what they are suggesting is that travels from one state to the other should be stopped with certain exemptions of essential services, petroleum products, farm inputs, fertilizer, so that we can keep the wheel of our economy running. Like I said, that is their proposal. Federal government is yet to take it. Whether that will come out of Mr. President, the presidential task force will meet and take a holistic look at all the proposals that are coming as the next line of action going forward. This will look that's what I want to show you. We are working instead and collaborating with the state government and the national entities. This phase going into the market decision the inputs and the different segments of our society. And then, there's no place I don't know the reason why I was happy to get this press conference. But because the president of the NLC, and Kawaba was with me, he had come to see me. They had written a letter, quite all right. But also in the same manner, suggesting ways. They represent the working class. They also listen to what is happening. They see what is happening in different clubs. Ayuba Waba is not only the president of NLC, he is also the international president of the labor movement. I believe that he is consulting all over the world, listening to his workers in different countries, and also taking experiences of how other nations are dealing with the lockdown, because virtually the entire world is on a lockdown. Some who had the infection earlier are beginning to ease up the lockdown as they have succeeded in flattening the curves, and they begin to move into bringing their nations back into productive sessions, and also getting their systems back into life. So there's no threat from labor. We are consulting with them. They have opinion. They share with us. And at the end of the day, at every step of what we have done thus far, we have kept contact with the working class to ensure that at least their views are adequately taken and represented. The one that has to do with private schools, unfortunately, the Minister of State Education is not here, and I don't run a private school. I wouldn't know how that can happen, that they will demand for payment from their people. I think the objective of running a school is to ensure that you bring up leaders, you train them well, they pass their examinations at different levels. It's a thing of pride for every school to make sure that their pupils do very well and prepare them for examination. So I wouldn't be able to know, but I would draw the attention of the Honorable Minister of State Education to this, to see if he can verify, try to establish if such a thing is happening. He would want to know the justification for it. Because these same people have paid school fees, but they are not in school. So, I mean, any other extra payment would amount to double payment because they are paid. I still have a teenager that goes to secondary school, and I know that I've paid the school fees for this time. So if he's not being taught, can I be asked to pay another fee? I think it is just reasonable that parents should not be put under that pressure because they have paid their fees. They have truly paid their fees, and the teaching is not going on, not as a result of anybody's fault, but the coronavirus has come upon us. As we proceed, I can assure you that we'll be looking at what is happening in different climes and see what best model we would adopt going forward, what has happened in different countries that have had experiences. And the experiences are different. Before I came in, I got a paper, I got some magazines from one of these countries that came out of the pandemic quite fast. This is from the nation, the Republic of Korea. They said the title is Flattening the Curve on COVID-19, and it's dated April 15, 2020. How Korea responded to the pandemic using ICT. And they gave 5 steps, all ICT driven. ICT did social distancing, ICT did the tracing, ICT did the testing, ICT did everything. So every country has its own experience. We believe that even within the Nigerian context, we have our own experience. And whatever final decision we will take going forward will be informed by the experiences that we've garnered over the course of the last 2 months as we've dealt with this pandemic as it has afflicted our nation. But be rest assured that whatever is decided finally will be for the good of our people, for the good and health and wealth of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of today's national briefing. Let me remind you again that going forward, this briefing will take place 3 p.m. each day or on any other appointed day should the need arise, and that it will be for 1 hour. This will help your programming and this will help for other planning as well. The message is coming out today, very simple. It's just that we must come together and take responsibility to stop community spread. This is what we are experiencing now is a temporary sacrifice for long-term benefits for all. Again, the message of hope, the message of strength, resilience, and need for compliance with advisories are all out there. Please obey them. It will be for our own benefit. We want to thank our partners, the media partners, NAPTIP and Site Savers for the sign language, and for all Nigerians that have been following this and sending questions from home. We want to thank you very much. We shall see you tomorrow by the grace of God. God bless Nigeria.
There is so much misinformation and distortion out there, especially on the social media. All it takes is just a click and the fake news goes viral.